Imagine you saved your entire life. You skipped vacations. You packed lunches. You said no to things you actually wanted. And finally, you hit $100,000 in the bank. You felt like you'd made it. You felt safe. And then 2026 arrived. And somehow, you still feel broke. How is that possible? How does a person with 6 figures in the bank still feel like they're one bad month away from disaster? That's not a personal failure. That's not bad math. That is the economy doing something very specific to your money and your sense of security without ever asking for your permission. Today, we're going to tell you the story of how $100,000 stopped being rich and became the bare minimum just to feel okay. Let's start with a man named Dave. Dave is not real. But Dave is absolutely a real type of person. Dave grew up in the 1990s. His parents told him the same thing millions of parents told their kids: save money. Work hard. If you get to $100,000, you're set. And Dave believed it. Why wouldn't he? Back then, the numbers made sense. In 1995, the median home in America cost around $130,000. A year in college cost maybe $5,000 at a state school. A hospital visit for a broken arm didn't require a payment plan. You could fill up your gas tank and still have money left over for dinner. $100,000 back then was a real number. A powerful number. It meant options. It meant safety. It meant breathing room. So Dave worked. Dave saved. Dave sacrificed. And 30 years later, Dave finally hit $100,000. He expected to feel invincible. Instead, he opened his laptop and checked his monthly expenses. Rent, $2,400. Car insurance, $280. Health insurance, $600. Groceries, $700. Utilities, $250. Phone, $90. Student loan, $430. Gas, $200. That's $4,950. Every single month. Just to exist. Just to stay alive and housed and not in the dark. Dave stared at his $100,000 and did the math. If he lost his job tomorrow, which could happen, because layoffs are back in fashion, his $100,000 would last him exactly 20 months. Not 20 years. Not 20 decades. 20 months. And that's if nothing went wrong. No car breakdown. No medical emergency. No broken appliance. No sudden rent increase. Dave realized something terrifying. He wasn't rich. He wasn't safe. He was just one bad event away from the edge. So what happened? How did the finish line move so far? Let's rewind. Think of the American economy like a swimming pool. In the 1990s, the pool was filled with a certain amount of water. That water was money. And $100,000 was enough to float comfortably. But then something started happening. The government, specifically the Federal Reserve, began adding more water to the pool. Not because there was more swimming going on. Just because adding water was the policy. This is called money supply expansion. And for a long time, it felt great. The pool got bigger. People felt wealthier. But here's the problem with adding water to the pool: everything floating in it gets lifted. The price of your house goes up. Good if you own a house. The price of groceries goes up. Bad if you have to eat. The price of rent goes up. Terrible if you're renting. The price of healthcare goes up. Catastrophic when you need it. This lifting of prices is called inflation. And it doesn't knock on your door and announce itself. It just quietly, slowly, steadily makes everything cost more. $1 in 2000 is now worth about 44 cents in 2026 purchasing power. That means if you saved $100,000 in 2000 and put it in a mattress, you'd open it today and find out it can only buy what $44,000 used to buy. Your $100,000 didn't disappear. But its power did. And then, because the pool wasn't draining fast enough, something else happened. The pandemic hit. In 2020, governments around the world did something unprecedented. They printed money. A lot of it. In the United States alone, roughly $5 trillion was injected into the economy in less than 2 years. Stimulus checks. Business loans. Bailouts. Programs upon programs. It was necessary, some say. It kept things from collapsing entirely. But here's what nobody told you on the news: all that new money had to go somewhere. And it went everywhere. It went into houses. Home prices jumped 40% in 3 years. In some cities, they doubled. First-time buyers got priced out completely. Renters watched their landlords raise prices by $500 overnight because the market. It went into stocks. The stock market roared. People who already had investments got richer. People without investments watched and wondered why the economy seemed great on TV while they couldn't afford a down payment. It went into everyday goods. Supply chains broke. Ships couldn't unload. Workers weren't working. Factories were closed. But demand? Demand was sky high because people had stimulus money and nowhere to spend it. The result was inflation unlike anything most Americans had seen in their lifetime. 8.9% inflation in June 2022. The highest in 40 years. And here's the brutal truth: wages didn't keep up. They never do. Prices rise fast. Wages rise slow. That gap, the space between what things cost and what you earn, gets paid for by your savings. Your $100,000 was the gap filler. And the gap got very, very wide. Now let's talk about Dave's neighbor. Her name is Sarah. Sarah is 34. She earns a decent salary, $72,000 a year. She has $110,000 saved. By every traditional measure, Sarah is doing well. Better than average, actually. And yet Sarah hasn't slept properly in 6 months. Why? Because Sarah knows things that her parents didn't have to know. She knows that the average American medical bankruptcy, the kind that happens when someone gets sick and doesn't have enough insurance, can wipe out $80,000 to $200,000 in a single event. She knows that if her car dies, a replacement reliable enough to get to work costs $30,000 minimum. And that's used. She knows that if she wants to buy a home, not a mansion, just a normal home, the median home price in the US in 2026 is hovering around $420,000. With a 20% down payment, that's $84,000 before she even closes. And then mortgage payments. And then property taxes. And then maintenance. She knows that if she has a child, which she's thinking about, the cost of childcare alone can run $1,500 to $3,000 a month in most major cities. That's more than rent used to be. Sarah looks at her $110,000 and she doesn't feel rich. She feels like she's holding a glass of water in a desert. It's something. It's precious. But one wrong turn and it's gone. This is the psychology that nobody talks about. Money isn't just math. Money is emotion. When you feel financially secure, you think more clearly. You take better risks. You negotiate better at work. You make long-term decisions. You invest in your health, your education, your relationships. When you feel financially fragile, even if you have $100,000 in the bank, your brain goes into survival mode. Psychologists call it scarcity mindset. You start hoarding. Not money necessarily, but options. You stay in a job you hate because it has health insurance. You don't start the business because what if it fails? You don't move to the better city because the transition costs money you can't afford to lose. Your $100,000 feels like everything, and it is everything, so you protect it like a fortress and never use it as a launchpad. This is the invisible tax of financial insecurity. It costs you opportunities you can't measure in dollars. And the cruelest part? The people who have enough to feel truly secure, not $100,000, but $500,000 or more, they don't operate this way. They take risks. They invest. They grow. The safety net isn't just a safety net. It's a springboard. And most people never jump because they're too afraid to let go of the ledge. Now let's ask the real question. If $100,000 is just the starting blocks, where is the actual finish line? Financial researchers and economists have thrown around different numbers. MIT's living wage calculator shows that in most major U.S. cities, a single adult needs to earn between $65,000 and $95,000 just to cover basic needs, no savings, no investing, just existing. The general consensus in 2026 financial planning is that true middle-class security, the kind where you can handle emergencies, save for retirement, send a kid to school without taking out loans, and not panic when the car needs tires, requires a net worth of somewhere between $400,000 and $750,000. That number sounds insane. It is insane. But let's break it down. Emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses, $15,000 to $30,000. Home down payment, if you don't already own, $60,000 to $100,000. Retirement savings, to not work until you die, $500,000 to $1 million at a minimum. Healthcare buffer, because one event can ruin everything, $50,000. Add it up. The finish line isn't $100,000. The finish line is somewhere closer to $500,000. And it keeps moving. So what do we do about this? What does Dave do? What does Sarah do? What do you do? First, understand the enemy. Inflation is not your personal failure. It is a structural feature of how modern economies are managed. That doesn't mean you can't fight it. It means you need the right weapons. Saving money in a regular savings account is not enough. The average savings account interest rate is still well below inflation. Your money sitting still is your money getting poorer. You have to make your money move. Investing is not just for rich people anymore. Index funds, ETFs, retirement accounts, these are the tools that give your savings a chance to grow faster than inflation erodes them. The stock market, on average, returns about 7 to 10% per year over the long run. Inflation runs about 3 to 4% in normal times. The gap between those two numbers, that's your path forward. Second, redefine what $100,000 means. It's not a destination. It's a foundation. It's the concrete that goes underground before the house gets built. Nobody looks at concrete and says we're done. But without it, the house falls. Getting to $100,000 is genuinely hard. For most Americans, it's harder than ever. If you're there, be proud. Then keep going. Third, understand what security actually buys you. Security is not a number on a screen. Security is options. Security is the ability to say no to a bad job. The ability to handle a crisis without drowning. The ability to take a risk that could change your life. The goal of saving money is not to have money. The goal is to have choices. And in 2026, choices require more capital than they ever did before. Here's the story that started us off, with a different ending. Dave hits $100,000. But this time, Dave doesn't stop. Because Dave understands that the game has changed. The pool is bigger. The water is everywhere. The prices are higher. And the only way to float is to grow. So Dave keeps investing. Dave diversifies. Dave learns about assets that hold value when inflation rises. Dave reads, not obsessively, not to the point of paralysis, but enough to understand what's happening to his money and why. And gradually, Dave's $100,000 becomes $200,000. Then $350,000. Then $500,000. And somewhere around there, Dave notices something. He stops panicking when the car makes a noise. He sleeps through the night. He starts thinking about starting something new, because the risk feels manageable now. That feeling, that specific, quiet, deeply underrated feeling, is what $100,000 used to buy. It's what you're chasing. And in 2026, the price of that feeling has simply gone up. The goal hasn't changed. Only the number has. So keep going. Subscribe for more economic explainers that actually make sense.